everyone, I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to play with some non-superwash yarn, specifically KnitPicks Bare Capra DK, which I think the Capra DK base is still on the KnitPicks website, but I'm not sure if it's still available in this bare 100 gram form. But I am very excited to dye this today. Capra is a DK weight yarn, 85% merino wool, 15% cashmere. I remember when KnitPicks first released this, I was so excited. This was one of the first cashmere blends I ever knit with. And then of course I was even more excited when they came out with Capretta, the fingering weight version. But I am hard pressed to remember if I have dyed the DK weight form. I know I've dyed the non-superwash and superwash versions of Capretta, but I can't remember if I've dyed this version before. Because this yarn is non-superwash, felting is a concern. You can move yarn when it's hot a little bit, but you don't want to move it a ton because heat plus agitation can lead to felting. This has enough twist to it that it isn't like absurdly feltable, but it could still felt. So I'm thinking that I want to do something I haven't done in a long time and go for a cool process variegated colorway that is a little bit more repeating than what I typically dye. And I want to do that on this base. Before I go pre-soak the yarn, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my lab partner today, Lindsay Liu. Lindsay, thank you so much for being my lab partner again, and I'm really excited to dye this yarn for you, and I really hope that you will love the result. But now I'm going to go ahead and add removable nylon zip ties to the yarn and go pre-soak it in some plain tap water for at least 30 minutes so the fibers can be really well saturated. Since the yarn is non-superwash, colors should apply a little bit more evenly because with the non-superwash wool plus the cashmere content, it will take more time and acid for colors to absorb, which should allow us to get some more even coverage in our sections. But I still want it to be pre-soaked because dry patches can add resist and things like that. If you want to learn more about how to become a Dyepot Weekly lab partner or about KnitPicks yarn, even if this particular bare yarn is no longer available, I will have links and affiliate links to everything down in the video description. And actually, if you go towards the bottom of the video description, I always have a video content section where I always detail the amount of dye and which colors and everything I use. So that's usually further down in the description, but I do try to keep track of the details of the amount of dye and acid and things like that, at least with the initial setups. I just had a little bit of a record scratch moment. My plan was to do something somewhat repeating, but the two skeins are actually not identical. They are both Capra DK. They are both 85% merino wool, 15% cashmere. They happen to be different lot numbers, which ordinarily wouldn't be such a huge deal. It's the same base fiber content, same original color. But there is one massive problem for creating a repeating colorway that led to a difference between these two skeins. The skeins are different lengths. One of them is shorter than the other. They should have the exact same yardage. Yes, they're both still 246 yards per 100 grams. But since one of them is longer, if I dye these with similar sized sections of color, they're gonna be different. The colors will pull different, the color sections will be different lengths. Now, with hand-dyed yarn, there's gonna be some variation. And so there potentially would be differences between the two skeins with the technique I was going to do, where I was gonna do probably 3 or 4 sections of color around the yarn in a pan and then go heat it up. And I still want to do that, but I think now I'm gonna go for something a little bit more random in the placement of the colors because I can't control, I guess, the finished size. So we might go for something more layered with smaller amounts of color, purely because that will give us more consistency between these two skeins. Now, if I had discovered the size difference before I got it wet, I could have reskeined the yarn. Skeins would have been the same size, and then I could have proceeded and done this video as I planned. But it's wet, and I want to dye this yarn today, so we are going to completely shift gears. This is okay. This kind of thing happens. And I think that rather than try to force into a direction that may not create something the way I wanted to, let's pivot and see, okay, we have yarns in 2 different skeins. I don't have time to reskein them. Let's create something that maybe will be a little bit more similar than what I thought. So I now just need to go ahead and rethink my color plan. I was originally planning on playing with Spearmint Breeze, Bright Aqua, Indigo Blue, which you can see clearly has crashed out of solution, and this is the same stock that I made for one of the Hanukkah episodes. But instead of keeping that cooler toned palette, I'm gonna bring in some pops of some red, some cherry bomb, to add a little bit more dimension to what will ultimately be much more layered and probably have smaller patches of color than what I was originally planning. Now, how this is gonna work with starting with cool process, I'm not really sure. We're gonna kind of make that up as we go along, but this is the palette that we are gonna start with, and we will potentially add more color once the yarn is hot, but we're gonna start off layering all the color on with the yarn cool, and then see where we go. The yarn is pre-soaked closer to a couple of hours, and there's no water or acid in the pan yet, but in this jar, I have 8 cups of water with 4 tablespoons of white vinegar. And I'm not adding a lot of it, just about maybe 2 to 3 cups. We will be adding more liquid later on, so this is enough that the yarn is fairly saturated already, but you know, it's not covered. So when I add color, we're gonna spread things out, it shouldn't move a ton. It does seem a little bit to me like there might be a very slight color difference between the yarn. I'm not sure. I mean, this one right here is looking a little bit darker to me. It's possible that it's got to do with the saturation. I don't think that that would make a huge difference in the end, but could, I mean, very well be a lot difference between them. Now this pan and all of the other tools and equipment I'm using today are dedicated for dyeing yarn and aren't used for the preparation of food. And even though we have acid in here, clearly I am on my countertop, which is protected with a shower curtain. So once we start adding on color, it can spread. It's not gonna set right away, even with a higher amount of acid. So let's take our Bright Aqua with this color. It's funny, like in some spots, like over down there, which you can't see, it looks really green, and other spots it looks a lot more blue, but this color is beautiful. I am going intentionally for more squiggles versus doing lines. And so these colors are going to blend for sure, but they aren't necessarily gonna blend like all the way. I don't really know. We're just gonna see where we end up. Now this indigo color, which I'm gonna use a bit less of, but I'm still coming over with squiggles. Eventually we'll add more water that we will eventually let things spread out. This color I know spreads a bit. When I used it in my layering hurts video, that indigo color did spread a lot. Now there's always a chance that maybe it won't spread nearly as much because we don't have as much liquid right now or heat, but we will be adding more liquid later on. Now the thing is, I really like these colors. I'm a little nervous about bringing some red into it, but I think that the green is blue enough, and Cherry Bomb is a cool toned red that I think that it'll be nice. I don't think it'll go brown on us. It just might add some more purple notes onto something that overall is otherwise going to be fairly blue. And so this is just one layer of color. These colors will spread. This yarn is not superwash, and I bet if I flip it, and I'm really not trying to move the colors yet, but you can see how already these colors, oh, and there's a little bit of that powder. These colors are already sinking into the yarn, and it's spreading a bit without us even doing anything. I don't know if I've done something like this cold. It's hard to say. If I have, I certainly haven't done it with this much liquid. I've definitely done some like leave no dye behind things, cold and then set it after, but this just has like a different kind of feel to it for me. So I do also want to point out, oh, I know why that may have shown up green. It's possible that this tip used to belong to a radioactive, and so I'm like, there's a little bit of yellow around the tip. I probably put the wrong cap on at one point. That's my best guess there. I'm really enjoying the way these colors are combining. I do want to take care that I don't do too much color because I don't want there to be a ton of washing. But I am really enjoying whatever it is that's happening with this. With the, ooh, look at that. Look at how water, ooh, that's cool looking. Okay, we're gonna go with this and see how it ends up. These smaller patches of color, as I let that run out, aren't gonna necessarily feel as small as we move on. So I'm having fun. One reason why I am doing more like squiggles and curly cues versus doing sort of straight lines is that it allows me to be a lot more random with the placement and will help make things be less repeating overall. Even, although I guess maybe the hearts is a better way to do that because I'm seeing all of these curves that feel fairly parallel. But the yarn is a little bit like scrunched and squished in here. But let's see, because if I flip it, see how much these colors have spread already just from moving it a little bit. Like they're already spreading out. There's enough water in here that we are getting something soft and layered feeling, but a little bit different. And so I want to pay some attention to the edges because I think that that has less color on it so far. But I'm truly amazed how much things are spreading out. Truly, truly amazed. And let's just go this way. I like this like dusty kind of purple color we're getting. I know I said I wasn't going to use a lot of that, but I'm liking whatever this is doing. And I can do some jagged lines. Okay, I think, goodness, I'm like debating a lot because I like what's happening naturally, but I also feel a need to touch it. And maybe what I'm gonna do is rotate the zip tie. And so as I lift, you can see some of those indigo particles coming down. But by lifting it at the zip tie and letting us move this yarn, that is giving a chance for, just because of gravity, some of those colors to spread. This is really pretty. I really like this. Okay, we're gonna go over to the stove right now. All right, I am going to turn the heat on really low. There's not a lot of liquid in here yet. And let's see, I have this cup that has a tiny bit of vinegar in it. And to that, I'm gonna fill the cup with some of that original water that I had mixed. So it's not even adding a whole other tablespoon. But I'm just gonna add a little bit more liquid at these corners. Just because I want more liquid in here as we start heating things up. And now I'm comfortable raising the heat a bit more. just until we start seeing some steam, but then I will reduce it. But look at this softness. There are a lot of times I call colorways watercolor. This feels watercolor to me. We added such tiny sections and these colors spread so much that it is beautiful. I'd be hard pressed to say which colors are spreading the most. Clearly that indigo is spreading, and maybe some of the other colors. And I don't think, well, if we were using superwash yarn, we would not get something that felt this covered. Okay, I'm now gonna reduce the heat to low. I don't think that we would have something that felt this well covered if it was superwash yarn, because with acid in there, the colors would start striking faster. I think to get an effect similar to this on superwash yarn, I would need to start with no acid, even though my tap water is slightly acidic, and then maybe by moving it, we'd see similar like types of spread and things. Part of me wants to add more color, and the other part really doesn't. There are parts, and I'm unsure if this is just this one skein, that feel deeper and darker, and then parts that don't. Okay, let's do a tiny experiment. Yeah, if I pour water on top, you can see that those blues, those deeper blues, are moving, and you can see them a bit towards the edge in the pan as well. So who knows, maybe I will layer some more indigo just over everything at some point. I was really just curious what was happening, but for now I'm gonna keep a close eye on this. We're seeing some bubbles and some simmering. I think I'm gonna let this sit for 10 minutes and then we'll come back and check. But I do want to point out we do have a lot of blue and not a lot of liquid. Actually, I'm wondering if everything else feels, no, I'm seeing other colors like in their little areas as well. So, because I was like, part of me was wondering if I wanted to try to like add more water now to move things around to make that easier. But no, I think I'm just gonna set a timer for 10 minutes, leave the heat on low, and then we'll decide what we wanna do. Lindsay, I really was trying to do something I haven't done in a long time and wanted to revisit. And I have to say, I'm happy I went in a different direction because this is doing more than what I hoped. I love layering colors and layering more and more until you get soft shifts in color. But when I do that with superwash yarn, it needs a lot of layers. Like I have to keep going because you want there to be enough coverage. And sometimes like I'll start with say a goal of it being a blue. And so therefore I'll add a few different like yellow and green hints underneath it to give it some like different undertones and hues in there. Or if I was doing a green, I would layer lots of blues and yellows and greens together because knowing that eventually it'll start to average towards the green, but have those softer shifts of color. And here, I mean, we threw the red in there too, and it definitely made the colors more muted. I suppose the indigo would have made it muted anyway, but there is a softness to it that I really, really hope we're able to capture some of now that we're applying heat. I really hope that, I mean, it's possible everything will average out, but we're still in extremely low water over on the stove. I will be adding more. I just want there to be some chance for some of this to strike a little bit before we add more liquid. I can't tell if the color has changed substantially. I don't think this is where I thought I would be going with the color, but I like it. There's definitely, and I'm trying to be very gentle, some indigo that is undissolved, but I want to come in now. I don't really want to shock the fibers. This water is cool. I want to add the rest of this liquid now to give the yarn a chance to float more freely in the pan. Ooh. Oh no, I think that's just that indigo. And I think I am going to come in with some more water. So I'm going to go fill up that container to bring another 8 cups of water to really allow everything to float. And while we're at it, And add a few splashes of vinegar, just so that way it is there. And so this is gonna allow all these colors to blend a little bit more, but hopefully for any of the blues that we've seen that have not bound yet, for everything else might blend more. Hopefully it will, although I'm moving it now, which is probably ruining like everything. I'm like seeing all the little variation go away. Okay, I'm gonna try to treat this one the same by moving that there, and I'm gonna try to stop. I'm a little concerned because there's a lot of color there and not a lot in the middle. Or honestly, I keep changing my mind. Because I'm like, I don't want everything to blend together, but you know what? If it does, it does. This should not be warm right now, but ooh, this is pretty. It does, oh, I'm not sure. All right, I wanted to give a chance for these blues. Like, I didn't want everything to like move and change too much, but I wanted to give a chance for some of those colors to be able to go more all over and not just stay at the bottom. I'm glad I flipped it. We'll see if I'm still glad in a little while. But anyway, now I need to, because it's now just lukewarm, I need to bring up the heat. I'm gonna keep an eye on it so it doesn't start boiling too heavily. And I wanna let it heat for 30 minutes and then we'll come back and check in. I don't remember how long I set the timer for. I know that things have blended a lot and the two skeins are feeling pretty different for me. This one's feeling a lot brighter, like more bright blues, and this one's feeling a bit more muted. Lindsay, this might be some kind of fade situation or blend situation. I've tried to keep them the same, but the water looks pretty clear. I don't want to move it very much, but the good news is that the color has set, and so that makes me very happy. Anyway, I just wanted to check in. There's still 7 minutes on the timer, so however long I had it set for, but the heat is just gonna remain on low until the timer goes off. All right, I am now going to turn off the heat. I am amazed that the two look so different. I try to treat it the same. Maybe when I flip it, like it'll feel different, but I really don't want to move it around a lot right now. I don't want to risk felting it. To get like a matted, felted mess, it does take a lot of agitation. And I think that the stage where people are more likely to felt their yarn is not from the dyeing stage, but it's from the washing, when you're moving it more, twisting it, potentially to remove fiber. So you're gonna wanna be really gentle with the washing. And similarly, I wanna let this cool completely. The heat is now off. I wanna let it cool completely before I remove the yarn. And then once it's cool, we'll go wash it. But as far as I'm concerned, all of the color has cleared. So I'm very happy about that. It is the next morning, and I wanted to both show that the water is clear, but I also wanted to flip. And yeah, the shorter skein is deeper and the longer skein is brighter for whatever reason. I don't remember which one was closer to me, but I'm gonna move this over to the sink and we'll start washing. But at least the water is clear, so that's a really good sign. Let's wash the yarn. And so I'm actually gonna fill up the basin with not the coldest water just because it's winter. So I'm adding a tiny bit of warmth to it because in Massachusetts, it is very, very cold. But I'm gonna add some dish soap to the water now. Distribute that in, and then we're gonna fill this up and then add the yarn. Just so that way we aren't having running water on top of our non-superwash yarn. Of course, it is so sudsy, we can't really see. It's possible I treated these differently. I am amazed with how differently they took up color. So amazed, but all right, I'm adding that in to soak for a minute. I did just go double check to see if one was like superwash or something. All right, I am seeing, and I'm picking it up gently, a little bit of some bleeding. But now what I'm gonna do is, the yarn is dripping. I am not wringing it out because I don't want to agitate it too much. So I'm gonna fill the basin back up, and there's still obviously soap in the yarn, and I'm gonna add this back in. Yeah, so the water is still, again, cold. It's just not New England, fresh from the outside, frigid. And so I'm trying to not agitate. I am gently pressing it in the water. Oh, but that's already looking better, because we still definitely have soap in here. So I'm gonna let it sit again for not like 1 minute or so, and then we will come and rinse some more. But I'm doing this because this way there's time for things to sort of come out of the yarn if it's gonna come out. I mean, I'm just gonna wait. I'm not seeing anything else come out, which is good, but I'm just giving it some time to soak, and then we'll come and change the water and check. Just like a minute later. And I'm not seeing color really in there. Sometimes like non-superwash yarn has like a cloudiness to it when you rinse, which could be some like dirt or something. It's not looking like dye tape. Oh, this is so pretty though. Again, not what I thought I was gonna dye, but very, very pretty. Now another option for filling up the basin that I like to do sometimes to reduce agitation is to let the water go onto the side of the pan, so that way it is still filling up, but it's not running on the yarn. It running on the yarn might not cause a big deal, but I'm just being extra cautious here. Yeah, I am not seeing any more bleeding, so I am going to let the yarn just like soak for a minute. I think, well, there might be a tiny bit of soap, so I might do this one more time. Then I'm gonna put it through my spin dryer and hang everything up to dry. And so then we'll come look at the finished yarn. Now that the yarn is dry and I can see more of the bright patches on the shorter skein, they feel a bit more similar, but this one turned out a lot softer, a lot less variation than this other one. And so I don't know if it's because they were milled differently. I don't believe they were made in different mills, just certainly different batches. And so I am honestly perplexed a little bit about that. But it also could have been the position in the pan. And I think at one point I moved one a little bit more than the other, and that could have caused those colors to spread and blend a little bit more. I am very excited with the technique, and it's something that I would love to explore more in the future. But Lindsay, I absolutely recommend that when you turn this really, really beautiful yarn into something, I would work from both cakes at the same time and blend them together. Unless, of course, you want to have something that is more of a fade, and then you could start with one, and then before the transition, alternate skeins every couple of rounds then to blend them together a little bit more and have something that is more intentionally asymmetric. But I would absolutely, this is one of the most dramatic examples, I think, of a difference in dye lot that I have seen for a while, and I'm a little bummed because I did want them to be more similar. That's why I shifted my original idea, my original technique. But ultimately, I am happy with the colors that we have here. And so for that, I am thankful. The only other thing I'm sad about is that KnitPicks doesn't seem to have a bare Capra yarn base anymore. Capra still exists as a dyed colorway, at least I'm like 99% sure it does, but there isn't a 100 gram bare version of this yarn on the website anymore. And so for that, I am disappointed because I really, really love this yarn. Twisting it up, it is so soft. I have used this yarn in projects before and I absolutely adore it. So Lindsay Lou, I really hope you're gonna love this yarn, and thank you so much for being my lab partner for this episode of Dyepot Weekly. I had a blast creating this yarn. If you would like to learn more about how you can become a lab partner, go and check out the listings in the ChemKnits Creations Etsy shop. Lab partners get 100 grams of hand-dyed yarn featured in a video and some shout outs. Just let me know some colors to avoid and I will create something with you in mind. It's funny because I think KnitPicks has a superwash, well, I know they have a superwash Capretta, which is the fingering weight version that also has some nylon in it. And I think that they still have the non-superwash Capretta available as well in bare yarn form. But yeah, the Capra, I think I remember back when they were discontinuing it maybe. Oh, I don't know. It's very easy for the years to blend together and to lose track of things. But what I do know for certainty is that there's a lot more fun yarn and colors coming up here on the ChemKnits Tutorials YouTube channel. So please make sure you're subscribed, have notifications on, give the video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below letting me know what other kinds of bases you would like to see me dye. I have a big collection of undyed yarn, and I'm excited to use more of it in videos this year. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and thank you so much for watching.